I do love hearing that tune, folks. Puts a smile on my face every time. Thank you to Peter Trulin for that. Because when I hear it, it means it's time for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Reed, Bluffsterini in the home game and at Rec Poker Jim on socials. And I have the best freaking job in the world talking poker with my friends here on the Strategy Forums edition of the podcast every Monday night while we steal each other's chips in the free nightly home game. Now, this is the second of two lost episodes from 2024. We're going to be talking about a couple hands I played in the World Poker Tour series at the Wynn this December. It was a fantastic trip. But let's before we get into that, I want to introduce the idea of sponsorship. Thank you so much to Running Aces. They are the official sponsor of the Rec Poker Podcast. Find out more about them at runaces.com or come check us out. We're going to be having Rec Poker Weekend at Running Aces on January 31st and February 1st with some fun social events on the 30th and the 2nd. Lots of great stuff going on there. And of course, Rec Poker, we're a free, positive, encouraging, fun poker learning community. Come join us up for free. Get a free account at rec.poker. All it takes is an email address and a smile. And if you want to join our premium membership, it's never been easier. You can get your first month for only $5 by using the code RecPoker at checkout, or you can donate just $1 or more to your local food bank. And if you send us the receipt, we'd happily credit you your first free month, your first month of membership at Rec Poker Premium as a way of saying thanks for helping out your local food bank. So please do. Now, you get used to hearing my voice on Mondays, but I am only one man. It takes a group, a gang, a crew to make all the magic happen around here. We call our group of wizards the Wrecking Crew. If you want to learn more about me or the rest of the Wrecking Crew, go to rec.poker/crew, or you can just listen up because you're going to meet a few fantastic Wrecking Crew members here on the show right now, alphabetically by first name, starting with our own Craig Savage.
Yes, I'm Craig Savage. You can find me at C Savage Poker on Blue Sky. And you can find me every second and fourth Tuesday of the month with the Rec Poker crew with my co-teacher, Chris Long, hosting Teacher's Bet, where we take one of our members, we put them in the hot seat, go through one of their tournament hands or tournament series, picking apart their game, trying to find leaks in a classroom setting. We call that episode Teacher's Bet.
I'm Kim Kilroy. I'm Vet33 on the social platforms and Fergie56 in the home game. And I run a hand history review group where we discuss hands that our members play, just like we're going to do today.
Hey
And
guys,
Scott?
this is Scott Beckham, aka DFS Brat. I am a Twitch streamer. I Twitch. I stream every Saturday night and Sunday nights, MTTs on ACR, Global Poker, and all the little platforms. Come and check it out. We'll have some fun.
And we're also joined by a special guest for the second week in a row, Jay Carafiello. Jay, am I saying that right? You got such a cool last name. How am I doing there, Venom?
Yeah, it's Carfiello. It,
Carafiello.
yeah,
Damn. All right.
in Italy, it's Scarafiello. But
Ah.
in the U.S., they take the second A away.
Well, thanks for joining us again, Venom. It's always great to hear your insights in these hand discussions.
Yeah, definitely.
So we if you're listening earlier this week, you heard an episode going through two hands I played in the World Poker Tour World Championship. Humble brag. And we're going to take a look at two kind of similar hands from that series. These are both hands where I was dealt ace king suited, and I played them differently pre-flop, and it had some different connotations, some different effects post-flop. So let's just dive right into it. So this first hand is actually from earlier in the week. This is from the WPT Prime, which is a really fun tournament. It's got four starting days. I believe you can fire once plus one re-entry per flight, and it's got like a some ridiculous like guarantee at the end of it for an $1,100 tournament. This is one I played last year for the first time, and I was shocked. Like all the pros are just max firing into this. Everybody wants to be on day two of this tournament. It's a great format. It's a great series. I really enjoyed it. I'm kind of a one bullet guy for the most part, just being a recreational player and not having unlimited funds to fire away in this kind of stuff. But I did enjoy playing in it, and I did fire one bullet. So this hand takes place on level two. The blinds are 200, 300, 300. Middle position opens to 700, and we have ace king, ace of hearts, king of hearts, and we are in the hijack, I believe. So we could smooth call, we could three bet. I'm always inclined to three bet in spots like this. Um, when the open is 700 and the blinds are 200, 300, 300, does anybody want to weigh in on whether to three bet or call? And if we three bet, what the sizing should be? Kim, you unmuted first. What's on your
How
mind?
big are stacks? How deep are you?
This would have been pretty early in the tournament, so I'm guessing you know what, I didn't write down the actual stack depth for this one.
What
Um,
did we start with?
in the prime, I think we started with 40 or 50. Yeah, that would be a good thing to have written down, wouldn't it, Kim? I should have paid more attention in your in your how to take notes hand history review session. It's level two. No one had been getting out of line. I think I'll just say that we were deep. We should feel like we're deep here, whatever the actual number is. I think I'm comfortable saying. Um, so any other thoughts on sizing? I'll just run through it otherwise, which is fine. Correct?
Oh, I'm just gonna. I'm three betting. I want to get this heads up. I want to be in a position, and hand the chips at these levels. He makes it 700. I'm gonna make it something clean. I'm just gonna make it like 24, 25. Go
Hmm.
a little big.
Yep. Scott, you unmuted.
Yeah, same thing for me. I want to get like Greg was saying, get heads up, and I like the sizing that he used as well. So I'm gonna stick with what Craig said, 24, 2500, something like that.
Matt, Jay.
Yeah, for sure. 2,500. That's what we're doing here, especially
All right.
this early.
Nice. So I ended up sizing down just a little bit. I went to 2K, which is about three times their open. But we do have tons of chips, and I don't mind making it bigger, especially with what I consider to be like a premium hand, like what we've got here, Ace King suited.
By the way, I think all three of us are influenced by the fact that we play a lot in Texas. And there's difference between getting a heads up and getting a Texas heads up because Texas heads up, you go five ways to the flop.
Right?
So
Yeah.
just so you know, all three of us are here in Dallas or in the Dallas area. So if we don't make it bigger, we're going five ways. But your 2000's fine.
Yeah.
Even
Yes,
bigger,
Scott.
we're probably going four ways.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, yeah, point made. So they do end up calling, which it's interesting. Sometimes I feel like when we're three betting, we're looking for folds. Sometimes when we're three betting, we're looking for calls. Ace King suited is kind of like one of those in between hands where like there really isn't a downside. Um, Pretty good board. So the flop comes King, Queen, four with two spades. So no hearts. We have hearts. They check, and so now it's to us.
Jim,
Uh,
do we know which cards are the spades?
uh, we don't.
Okay.
No, I didn't get that. I
If it's
didn't get
both
that.
the king and the queen, that might be a little different than if it's just one of them, but that's okay.
Oh, it was the king and the queen. That's
Okay.
right. It was the king of spades, queen of spades, four. Let's just say diamonds. It
Sure.
wasn't a heart and it wasn't a spade.
Gotcha.
And so let me see. So there is 800 plus 4K. So there's 4,800 in the middle at this point. Um, so what's our action here? We've flopped top pair, top kicker. We don't have the heart draw. I guess technically we also have the backdoor straight with Broadway if it comes Jack 10. Anyone advocating for betting or checking? And if betting, how much? Craig, you're unmuted, so I'm going to bring
Yeah.
you up first.
I think we have a strong hand. We have top pair with top kicker. I think we have a lot of value targets on this board. We got all the flush draws, all the straight draws, weaker kings, ace queen. So with that many targets, I definitely want to be betting here. And I think we can also be going on the bigger sizing. This is a board. Yeah, I think we can go bigger than when we're playing against the blinds, right? Because the hands they have we are going to have higher value. So we want to get that value, obviously. And we know we're blocking king queen a little bit, so that's good. Um, so I would be going like that shade over half pot, like that 60% pot.
Hmm. Hmm. So I agreed with a lot of what Craig was saying. I actually sized down a little bit here. I'm not sure what I was thinking in real time. I liked that the king and the queen were both spades. I remember now because it just made it less likely that they were on those kind of flush draw hands. And so when they check here. They're still going to have some spade draws, of course, but they're going to have a lot of like two under cards. They're going to have a lot of like pocket eights, pocket nines, pocket tens, those kind of one pair hands. They're going to have some queen X. They're going to have some king X that we're blocking a little bit. But I was kind of trying to get after some value here. So I made it 1,500 into a pot of what do we got here? 4,800. So it's about a third. It's about 30%. And again, my default is typically to like bet smaller on flops and bigger on turns, but on dynamic boards like this, I think it probably does benefit from sizing up a little bit. So they check raise to 4,500. So my 15, and they just 3x that and send that back. What is everyone's thought at this point? I don't know if we want to talk about the kind of hands that we think that they do this with, or if we just want to talk about what we want to do with our exact hand. Jay.
Yeah. So because we went smaller here, there's nothing wrong. You just call. Like we're not folding. Um, I think ranges are going to be there's going to be some suited hands that'll be in there. Maybe hands like Jack 10 could easily be in this situation. Um, Fours, you might see a check raise here. I think they just want to get the hand over with because there's also like in our three betting range, we also have the Jack tens, right? Um, we have ace queen as well. So like if they think that they can just get you off of a king jack type of hand, they would make this move on you here. But I think like we're just not folding. It's different when we do go on the larger size
Hmm.
and we see a check raise here, which is going to be bigger, right, than what we're seeing now. And then I definitely would say like this may be like bottom set, or something of that nature, or even middle set, maybe something like queens.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think we just call here. We're not folding, not now.
Yeah. Scott?
Yeah, I also agree with just calling here. Like Jay was saying, you could have a lot of suited hands here, a lot of open-ended straight draws. He could also have actually ace king here as well, but
Hmm.
more unlikely than likely.
Hmm.
But I would actually proceed with caution, depending on what the turn card is. But I'm just calling here. I'm not raising or folding here.
Yeah, I like the point about the smaller bet sizing. It's kind of invites more check raises too, so we can't just call. They're in the polarized position now. We're in the condensed part of our range, so it doesn't benefit us to re-raise, I don't think, with his exact hand. And when they check raise, I'm thinking kind of similarly to you, Jay. Pocket fours, there's still a lot of flush draw combos out there. We don't know much about their opening range, but I think they were in middle position for this one, so it's not like they were under the gun. And King Queen is a check raise candidate here. We're blocking it with the king. But I was kind of thinking like. Okay, so the hands that they're check raising here, they don't have king four, they don't have queen four. I don't think they have pocket kings. Maybe they have queens, but for value, it does feel like king queen, which we're blocking, and pocket fours are really the value hands that they're check raising with here. Jay?
Yeah, the king queen hands. I mean, they're in there. I think part of the issue is again you went a little bit smaller on the three bet, right?
Hmm.
Well, the unsuited combos will be right. The offsuit combos will be there, but then now he only has two combos of suited, right?
Right.
So you're kind of narrowing that down. Um, which they would do this to try to protect a hand like that because unless it's king queen of clubs, right? Um, they're probably more likely they could probably even trap a little bit more, just check calling. You know what I mean? Versus
Yeah. Yep. I like it. So we do call. I did call in real time. The turn is an offsuit nine. So the board is king of spades, queen of spades, 4, 9 offsuit. So 10 jack does get there. The pot is now 13,800. They lead for 5,500. So pretty small relative to the pot. And again, we're deep. We're deep at this point. This sizing does not put our bottom chip in play. Even if we go geometrically from here, even if we like make a big pot size river bet from here, this does not actually threaten our stack. So I think they're leading a lot when they check raise and we call. Um, but what do we think about what they're doing this with or our action at this point? Craig, you just unmuted for a second there, so
Yeah,
I'm gonna.
I'm stuck here. Obviously, we're glad that we didn't see a spade. That's helpful.
Yeah,
Jack 10, I think, is certainly a concern. Um, there's a possibility. I was thinking of other kings he might have check raised with. King Jack of diamonds, King 10 of diamonds.
yeah,
Um, so I don't think I can fold to this bet, but man, I'm kind of trying to find a reason to fold at this point. I'm
yeah.
not going to fold yet, but I'm really doing a lot of, especially live. I'd be doing a lot of like actually looking at the person, getting a sense of how comfortable they feel. Um, we don't need to raise. We're getting no value from raising. Um, but this would be I would be looking for a lot of physical information at this point to help what I'm going to do on the river. But I'm going to call and get to the river.
Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you if you actually looked at when he made the bet. I was actually going to ask you, what did he look like? Did he look nervous? Did he look calm? Did he look relaxed?
So
Because
I tanked here. I tanked and I really just like tried to get as much information from him as I could. I like, when if we're locked eyes in spots like this, sometimes I'll just smile and just see how comfortable they feel. Sometimes people can just like be a little disarmed. Um so I did I didn't get any definitive reads either way about it here. And like I say, I don't play that much live compared to my online plays. So like the stuff that I'm bad at, the stuff that I still have room to improve live is like, pot size, stack size, live tells, that kind of stuff. Um, he was a pretty stoic player. So I didn't say I picked anything up, but I did think about it for a long time before acting. Jay, you unmuted first and then Craig.
Yeah. Well, for as far as the reads, it's too early, in my opinion. Most
Yeah.
reads up come later on in the day where they get a little more fatigued. You start seeing the reads come out a little bit more.
Mm,
Uh, but I think here, one, we're not folding. Two, I think we rule out pocket fours here.
I think
I
it's
think
too small.
fours would actually maybe even just check now, you know? And if they are going to try to deny anything, or they're going to try to get value from like your exact hand, right? They're just going to go big. They're just going to go really big in this spot. Um, so this lead here with the check raise, it almost feels like, yeah, they should be a mandatory spot. Otherwise, they kind of cap their hand. I think if they go like they check raise flop and then they just check turn now, right? They're almost capping their hand, in my opinion. But I don't think we're folding that for a 5K bet. Check raise was the 4,500, and now they're betting 5K. Like we're not folding, especially in position, because now you're
yeah.
just put them in a spot where we either get to put them in a blender on the river, right, or we just get to reevaluate based off of what peels off. You know what I mean? On the river, but I don't think that because a lot of times you'll see this and then it'll go check check, and then I mean you have showdown value now, right?
Yeah.
With top. So I mean, at this point, like I don't think we fold for a 5K bet.
I think
Craig?
the only problem, and has to be against a very good player, is that we're capping our range too, right? We call the check raise, we call the turn lead. Like a really, really good player is gonna like overpot the river if they have put us on our by this point, our hands, we might as well turn our cards face up against a really good player.
Yeah. But
That's the only downside.
do you think that the way we play this also looks like we might just have ace queen? and he's just doing this with King Jack, right?
Um, yeah. Sure, we have that too. Yeah,
He's like, yeah, like we probably do cap our hand, but it could also be that this is ace queen. You know what I mean? And now he just figures like he's just going to get all the value he can from you playing ace queen because you're never going to fold.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's we're definitely at one. In terms of what he has, we're either getting value owned, right, or the other direction, right? He's value owning himself. But I'm just worried about like, and maybe I'm just giving people too much credit. Um, of them putting me to a decision on the river where I don't want to put as many chips as they're going to want to put in with one pair when we
Yeah,
have the
so
best hand.
and I love hearing this feedback because all those things were in my mind at the time. So here's what I was thinking in real time. I was thinking this sizing, a balance, someone who's really serious and like wants to be following up on their check raise very frequently will choose a smaller sizing even with their, stronger hands here. But that being said, like the range of hands that makes this sizing bet on the turn, when we look at the board and we look at like what they have, I agree with Jay. I think this does basically rule out the top of their range. Like I don't think they have pocket fours anymore. Um, and like this is not a great board for pocket fours either. Like or even for king queen now. So we are worried about 10 jack, but the sizing I do feel I don't know. There's players that like they bet more when they have bluffs because they want to maximize the fold equity. There's players that sort of do manage to keep that like balanced sizing line. So I did end up calling, and I knew I couldn't raise, and like there was no value to be gained there. It did feel like it was. I've got top pair, top kicker, um, but I also want to point out that I did also feel that I was kind of turning my hand face up at this point. Like I have a good one pair hand is basically what I'm telling this player. It's too good to fold, but it's not good enough to raise on this board. That's like ace king, ace queen, king jack, something like that. Jay.
Yeah, even if you did raise there, it could be detrimental. But at the same time, you also want to keep all their bluffs in,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
Because if he did this with a hand, let's say it's like 9-10, right? 9-10 of spades, or a hand like that, or something like you just want to be in a spot where you definitely want to keep their bluffs in, you know.
Yeah. And I'm kind of hoping it just goes check check on the river at this point. Like I don't really want to put a lot more chips in. It's hard for us to improve at this point now. Like another king I guess would be great, but we're still losing to their sets. An ace would be good because we're gonna kind of counterfeit their king queen hands. Um, but like we're not catching up to 10 jack. We're not catching up to any sets like that. That's all behind us. So we're really just in my mind, I'm just kind of like hoping to get my top pair to show down here. So I do call. The river is an offsuit 8, and so the board is now 24,800. They bet again 7,500. So proportionally, even less than the previous spot. The previous spot was 5,500 into 13,8. This is 7,500 into 24,8. So it's like a little less than a one-third pot bet. And I just took forever on this spot. No one called clock, but like they were, people were like, giving me the eyes a little bit. In real time, again, I'm thinking, okay, so it's like, what are the value hands that check raised the flop and now are check raised and then now are still, comfortable enough to bet the river. Um, I'll see what you guys have to say before I finish my thoughts in real time. Craig, you unmuted. What's up?
I'm just a payoff wizard in these spots. I mean, just
Yeah.
I have, the 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 bet that I have to the math. I'm just going to pay them. I'm going to
Yeah.
pay them in case they have King Jack, and then I'm just going to pay them and see the bad news.
Yeah. And is that size dependent for you, Craig? Like if they jam here for like an over bet, does that
Yeah,
change your math?
yeah, I can find some folds. I don't, I again, against the really, 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 really good players. sometimes you have to hero call in those spots. But against most of the people that I'm playing with most of the time, the big bet on the end is just the nuts. A small bet, I'm just gonna have to look them up.
And
Yeah,
Jay?
yeah, I don't fold here. I think we just pay, and
Mhm.
turns it over and he's got it. Cool. I mean, at the end of the day, like we get a ton of information because he's probably going to play this spot the same exact way, right? In another situation. So, how much was in the pot, by the way? I was trying to calculate it out.
Uh, 24 8, and he leads, and he bets for 7,500, 24,800 in the pot,
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
betting under third pot.
under a
yeah.
third. Mm.
This is it's almost like a blocker bet, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there's so many, even if this is a studied player, let's say this is someone who's just like in the wizard every day, there are so many small leads here out of position, right? From a solver situation, that he can literally be doing this with ace queen himself. Um,
Mhm.
but he knows that you probably don't have too many raises, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So I'm just calling for sure.
And that's some foreshadowing because the next hand we're going to talk about in today's episodes does actually involve a blocker bet on the river. It's something I've been working on a little more. So, but we'll leave that aside for now. So yeah, basically that was my thinking as well. It felt like the turn sizing was actually the inflection point for the hand here. I think when they sized down on the turn, it really made me feel like they feel like they have to follow up here, but they don't want to put too many chips in. They're out of position. And that really kind of weighed me towards flush draws, even though the king and the queen aren't up, aren't available. They open in middle position. Um, Maybe they even turned like a nine or an eight, like they opened with like jack nine of spades and end up getting a pair by the end. So this blocker bake bet makes a lot of sense. I tanked for a long time. I did end up calling. I turned over. Well, I waited for him to turn over because it was his turn, and he did. He had the 6-5 of spades, so pretty good outcome for us. I give him heart for continuing on the. I fold maybe some queen X there, or maybe some worse kings that I have, or if I get there with like pocket jacks or something. I don't know, see how I could possibly get all the way to the river like that, but he was. I think he like knew he had to fire and just didn't bet big enough to get like he's got to bet at least half pot to try and get the kind of hand like that I'm telling him I've got to fold there. And once we did table down, like two other players at the table were like, "Yeah, see, I told you he had ace king." Like, yeah, I did. I was saying, yeah, I've got a strong
Right.
one pair hand here, but you don't. I'm not folding it to that size betting. Jay, you unmuted first, then Craig.
Yeah, I don't know that Craig's probably gonna tell me I'm wrong, but I don't know that leading 6-5 of spades here for 7,500 one makes any sense because ace literally there's how many hands are probably not even folding here. Even if you just floated with some random ace nine of spades, right? You probably wouldn't fold to this bet. You
Yeah,
know
he
what I mean?
would. Yeah, he would.
No,
Yeah, he would. Third pair, he's gonna fold it.
nah,
But
I wouldn't be folding. I would not
but
be. I don't like this bet. I don't like the lead. It's horrible. I think you
the
play
turn lead or the river lead?
right. Like you leave all the bluffs to just randomly hang themselves. I do think we get put in a blender here if they do go like pot or just over pot on the river, just like Craig was saying,
Yeah.
because it's apparent that everyone else at the table, well, the ones that made the call out that like I told you had ace king, probably would have put you in a blender in this spot, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think you played it well against this particular opponent and these sizings. Like the sizings are really bad. This is why you can't pass up on WPT events.
What's weird is he took this aggressive line with a check raise on the flop, where you should have more of those kings and queens in your hand, and he took it with the 6-5, suited with the flush draw, with no blockers to straights, right? So that's a very aggressive action, and then he just puts on the brakes on the turn and river. If he just you know, bets turn a little bit bigger and over bets pot, he's getting one pair of hands to fold, even top pair, top kicker. And if I had made the check raise with a 6-5, which I wouldn't have, I don't think, because of what your range interaction with that board is, I'm following through I'm gonna go fire and get top pair to fold.
Right. I think the
Um,
other is he could like even check raising flop, then check turn, because chances are Jim checks behind, right?
Yeah.
And then he could get away with bombing the river on that card and still get Jim to fold,
yeah, I
Yeah,
like
I
that
like
much
that.
better. If you're gonna do it, that's the way to do it.
right? And it would
Yeah.
have been like for what he put in on turn and river, he probably could have done half of that on river and got Jim to fold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think this player just didn't really have the courage of his convictions. Like I think he felt like he was obligated to continue, but didn't want to do it too big, so kind of like compromised by choosing a smaller sizing, and that is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
Don't compromise this kind of stuff.
See, I bomb, and then Jim Reed turns over Jack 10 and I lose. So, but I will follow through. I will follow through.
Yeah,
Reed,
Scott, you had something,
reads are bad.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
I think after his initial check raise and stuff, he just got like when you called, I think he felt kind of like he had to continue,
Yeah.
but this was more stack preservation, you
Yeah.
know, type of scenario, which he probably felt like monsters under the bed.
Mm.
I think the lesson to take away from that person's perspective, like if we can take a lesson from their hand,
Right.
like if you're going to go for this aggressive action on the flop and it doesn't work out, you have two options at that point. You either can just give up or you can commit. But now there are two ways to commit, right? You can fire, or you can check turn. And if you check behind turn, blast river. And I think that, but this half, I guess it's this, no half measures.
Yeah.
He took half measures on the turn and the river, and that's just where you get yourself in trouble. When you if we're going to learn from the other opponent's perspective, something to take away from this hand is when you're not sure, don't go half measures. Either go one direction or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't compromise. I like that.
100%.
All right, well, let's roll into another hand. So this one is from the championship. This one takes place, if you were listening to the previous episode, this hand takes place just a couple orbits later than the Ace King hand, where we got led into on the flop by the middle position player. So this is in the championship events, was just to reinforce it's a different tournament than the one that this check raise flop hand came from. And there is some meta game at play here. Um, I have been three betting pretty frequently in the WPT Championship. And in this hand, I just decided to smooth call instead, and here's how it goes. So this is in level three, 400, 800, 800. I'm in the big blind. The player to my left is under the gun. They open to 2x. Middle position is a call, and it folds around to me in the big blind. I've got ace king of spades. So suited ace king again, running pretty well so far in this tournament. Yeah,
So,
sorry.
question: how many aces and kings do you keep in your sleeves?
Yeah, I know, right? That's just how it goes sometimes. I wasn't making a lot of big pairs, but I was getting ace king and like suited aces quite a bit, so I
I
wasn't
like the
too
smooth
complaining.
call here. I
Talk
like
about
smooth call. Keep your range wide.
Yeah. Yeah, Jay?
yeah, the run good is pretty serious, but
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I think we can go either way here, but you're definitely pretty polar because you're going to be calling with your most of your range here, right? Like
Yeah.
um out of the big blind. So I think that flatting is not the worst. Our hand is uber disguised. Um yeah, I like it. I like it suited.
Hmm.
I think offsuit I'd be raising here.
That's a
Yeah.
really good point. It's a really good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, I think so too. And like I like to take squeeze spots, so the fact that there's an open and a call, that inclines me to three bet. The fact that the original opener was under the gun, inclines me to call. I'm going to be out of position, so that's pros and cons. Um, I did, yeah, as you guys say, a lot of competing factors there. But I think it's probably a mix. I decided just to call this time.
The nice thing about unrepping your hand is when you're up against a weaker ace and you guys flop ace high, you're they're going to be going for value, but you're going to have the better hand a lot of the time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's
Right.
really nice.
Right. And this is why you would rather three bet like an ace five hand
Yeah.
gonna do it versus flatting it. Where here, when you have ace king and you flat it, right, and then it comes ace high, you just tend to get paid off.
So very good insights already. So the flop comes ace five four with two clubs. Okay, ace five four two clubs.
Is the ace a club?
No, the ace
Okay,
is not a club.
good, important. Thank you.
So I think we're checking basically our entire range here in this dynamic. So I check middle position, or under the gun, the original player, the original raiser bets. I don't have the value that they bet here. I think it was probably a little less than half pot. The middle position player calls, and now it's back to us. Anyone advocating for, I mean, we're not folding. Anybody advocating for a raise or a call? Craig.
Oh, no, let Jay go first.
All right, Jay, jump in there.
I like a raise here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely like a raise here. I think if we just flat here, we're just going to put ourselves in a really, really, really tough. Like we put ourselves in a blender on a lot of turn cards, by the way.
Yeah.
So I think we just check raise here and either be done with the hand or we get called off. You know what I mean, by some weaker aces.
Hmm.
Um, because there's another piece of this too, that there's probably are some two pair hands, but I think the only two pair hand in this spot is going to be from the under the gun, because the under the gun leads here, right? And it's not going to be from uh the guy that's in position, right? He's just going to raise here, I think, if it's any two pair hands, you know,
Hmm.
like ace five, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
ace four, ace five, they're both
right.
definitely in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Not in this.
Uh,
I
but
don't
the
think
problem with ace four, ace five is the five and the four are both clubs. So he doesn't have ace five of clubs or ace four of clubs.
right. So he has ace five of diamonds. So he's only, what does he
No,
have?
the diamond. Okay,
Right.
right,
Right. So if he has ace five of diamonds, he's definitely raising.
And
right.
that is, it's interesting that that is the only other combo left because I've got the ace of spades
Correct.
and the four and the five are both clubs. So it's got to be, and there's an ace on the board. So whether that's the diamond or the heart, the only other combo is that one suited combo. That's a great
Right,
point.
Right.
Yeah, they only have one combo of that.
Check raise.
Uh,
I like it.
yep. Jay likes to check raise here. Any other input here, Craig? You're unmuted. No, you're good. All right. So I ended up just calling, and I thought here's my thought process is that I'm gonna have like obviously a lot of bluffs here, a lot of I'm in the big blind, so I've got like 6-7. I've got a lot of two club hands. I've got 6-3, which will come up in next week's episode because I closed the action with 6-3 quite a bit apparently. Um, and it didn't feel like a value hand, top pair, top kicker in the spot, but in retrospect, I think it really is because we're not looking at that many two pair hands. There's a couple sets out there, I suppose, but the in position player is definitely raising, like Jay says, with those hands on a two club board like this, which is pretty dynamic. So I think we can discount a lot of those. So I think I actually lost some value here just by calling, correct?
yeah. I think the things you just said that you can have the six sevens and the flush draws is why you want to raise because you have a
Yeah.
value hand here and you have those as bluffs and that's this value hand is the counterweight to those bluffs and so you're going to get called by ace queen and ace jack and ace 10 you know and any other suited ace that's not two pair, right? So that's exactly why you want to include this raising the strong hand because I hope I mean you're probably check raising some of those hands that you mentioned that you could have, right?
Yes. Yes.
So you want to definitely do that with this one as well,
And I've
I think.
also got 5-4. I'm, maybe the only player at the table with 5-4. I've got the sets. And when you can value raise, like yeah, I think you're right. So I think this was just a weak check call here. And
And
it's of course it's going to be hard to play out of position, on future streets. That's a constant though. You can't get away from that by just check calling here. All you're doing is making it harder by not expressing your range edge here. Yeah, correct.
And you're keeping the hand three-handed. If you raise here,
Yeah,
you're probably not getting called by both. And that's just one person folding out some equity of that
yeah,
pot. Like their ownership, whatever their equity is now gone, and it's now split between the two other players. So getting one person to fold, no matter what they have, is always good for you.
yeah. Jay?
Yeah, and like we're in a spot where we're definitely keeping their hands uncapped now. Um,
Right.
but I think to what you were saying earlier, and I made a comment about this too, right? Is it's not a lot of times like good players put us in a blender, but there's so many times that we just put ourselves in a blender. And
Mhm.
like this becomes a spot where if we as played, not that you played it bad, right? But I think as played, we are leaning more towards the side that like, hey, now I'm going to put myself in a blender when like the club peels on the turn, and then I don't know what to do anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like my hand is uber strong here until like the deuce of club peels off on the turn, and you're like, oh, okay, well, this is a now. What the hell do I do?
Yeah. And I think actually you hit the nail on the head there. I think part of my calling was like, okay, let's just find out if a club is going to hit before I decide to put any more chips in the middle here, which is not, I mean, you're free rolling the flush draws, unfortunately, when you do that. Like you're kind of lowering the variance on your own, but you're also just allowing them to continue with their, like you're not punishing them, you're not charging them to get there with their flush draw equity. So it is kind of, I think it's just like a weak, tight tendency that comes that we should all be fighting against. If you're listening live, email me Jim at rec.poker or hit me up on socials, RecPokerJim, and let me know what your thought is here because I think this is a really interesting spot in the hand here, and I think this is a spot where I like this conversation that we're having about calling versus raising, and I'd like to know what other players have to think about this. So, Jay, I want to go to your school of prophecy because the turn is the seven of clubs, which is just a terrible, terrible card. So the board is now ace of, let's call it diamonds, five, four, seven, all of clubs. So we could lead here, but I check. I think it's probably the right call. Anyone else, or Jay, you unmuted there. Any thoughts at this point in the hand?
Yeah, I think we just it's not a mandatory check, but I think we do check here. I
Yeah.
do, and I've kind of implemented this a little bit just for myself, particularly is I have tried to find creative ways to either get a really good idea of where I'm at in a hand, or take pots down, right? Because typically, if my chips are in a pot, um, I have zero desire to give up any of the chips that are there. So, um, leading is not the worst. The bad part about leading, though, is there's just too many times that, like, with the club, they're just going to check. I mean, they're just going to call, right? If they have the flush, they're probably not going to raise. They're just going to call. And then when the river card comes, now you're checking, right? And they're just, again, going to put you in a blender, or you just know in your head, like, hey, I'm just going to fold to any type of river bet. You know what I mean? Um, but I think, like, in this situation, checking is probably the way that you need to go.
Yeah, and I think to, simplify things, I'm probably putting a lot of my leads just into a check raising range there instead. And that's, you can balance that pretty easily with some, one high club hands to go along with some of your made stuff there. Scott, you unmuted first and then Craig.
Yeah, I think going checking is probably the best option here, but it's also you could do, like Jay was saying, you could lead out here, but I think it would mainly be player dependent, how your opponent,
Hmm.
how he's looking, live tells, that kind of thing. If is he comfortable, everything else. But I do honestly think checking is the best option here.
It's
Yeah,
almost
Craig.
like if you lead here, you're kind of turning your hand into a semi bluff of
Hmm.
sorts. And I
Hmm.
don't think we need to do that. We almost have, and so here's what happened. It's one of those things where you checked on the flop, and then you realized maybe you probably should have checked, or sorry, we called on the flop, and we probably should have raised. And sometimes that happens. And as soon as it happens, you realize, oh, I just took a passive action where I should have taken aggressive action. And then like the worst possible card comes off, and now you can't go into aggressive mode. So you have to stay on that passive line, and your hand has now become a bluff catcher. right? As strong
Yes.
as your hand is, it's basically a bluff catcher at this point. And so your goal right now is to get to that river as cheap as possible and hopefully pay off a cheap river bet and hopefully still be ahead.
Yep. Yep. So I check, everybody else checks, and we get to the river. So I think that is important that nobody bets on the turn here. I think that's, what Matt Affleck would refer to as an inflection point here. I think we can, we can learn about players' ranges from that. So I'll tell you guys one thing. So one thing I've been working on this series, and Craig, I'm so glad you said that because I've I'm often in the situation where I'm like, okay, so I'll just check and then evaluate on the river and hopefully, call a small bet. And the problem is in these goddamn 10Ks, they don't give me small bets on the river. It's just been like bombing river in these spots where they're polarized and I have a bluff catcher. And like I've set this whole thing up. Like, yeah, what I'd really like to do is just check the river and then call a small bet, but they do not oblige. And so
Right.
I've given myself this homework for these series is to actually legitimate, and I'm just saying this out loud. If you're listening to the show, exploit me, is to bet fold more rivers. I'm just
Yes.
taking the bet fold line because it doesn't occur to me in real time. When I'm playing in real time, I'm just naturally like, okay, let's check and let them bluff, and then we'll call. And then they like 1.5x pot or 2x pot, and like, well, FML, thank you
Yeah.
so much. Um, but yeah, you've unmuted, and then Jay, and
Yeah.
then we'll talk about the action.
This is something that Carlos tries to drill in my head for years, and it's so hard on that river to bet fold when your mindset was like, I can just call a small bet. But and again, this is very player pool dependent, maybe
Yeah.
instead of player dependent, but player pool dependent, right? Because you can't wait until it happens and then react. So if you think the pool of players is going to do what you're saying, which is polarize the river bets, what you're supposed to polarize the river bets, right? Go big with your bluffs and your value. Um, it, or if you're in a player pool that will just bet small, right? Then you can play that bluff catch game. But the idea of betting and possibly getting called by ace queen here and winning, right? Because they're never raising. And if they're raising, you're just beat.
Mhm.
And sometimes they don't even raise the hands that beat you. They just call them, right? And so as long as you're confident that you can fold to the raise,
Mhm.
even when it's the clickback, right? The small one, which is like so tempting. Maybe because you start thinking maybe they have ace queen, maybe they have ace jack, and I'm still winning. You have to be comfortable doing that uncomfortable thing, which is sometimes being bluffed.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
and listen, you're supposed to fold to bluffs sometimes. Like that's how the poker game works. Like occasionally you're going to get bluff. Just because they're bluffing sometimes doesn't mean that you should be like calling down all the time. That's part of poker is folding to some bluffs, calling some value bets. Like what you're trying to do is just make the most profitable decision in the long run, given the circumstances that you're facing. Jay.
Yeah, if you're not getting bluffed, you're just not playing the game or you're playing it wrong, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think one of the one of on the turn, right? I would have already been thinking that I'm gonna lead. I'm gonna donk lead any non-club.
Yep.
Like especially when it goes check check,
Yeah.
you know?
Check,
Or
check, check. Yeah, three
right,
three
right,
players here still. Yeah.
right. Or still like I'm gonna lead any non-club. That would have been my thought. As soon as the last player position, that third player checks, I'm like, I'm just leading any non-club as a donk lead here. And again, like I don't have to go big. I can go just enough in this situation. And if I get raised, we fold. And if we just get called, we probably just have the best hand here.
Yep. And that was my plan going into this. And I think, Craig kind of summed it up well. Bet folding river is like leading on the river in this spot. What you're doing is you're getting value from their hands that they would check back with. If they have an ace queen, ace jack, ace 10 hand here, they're not going to bet it for value if they can just close the action, but they will call your bet. They're still going to raise with the made hands. And if they're a smart player, they should also be raising with their bluffs. But you're never getting value from those check back hands if you check and just let them play polarized. The fact is, and this is the whole theory behind this, like why I should be bet folding rivers, why I should be block betting rivers more. And so it was very much, as you say, Jay, it was very much in my mind at the time. Like if the flush draw doesn't come in here, I get to do the thing. I get to do the thing I've been practicing for. This is it. I'm gonna get to do the bet the river and see how they respond. So I was like I was primed for that already. Craig.
I think that the my part there, or the thing I'm struggling with there, is getting the size right.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you like it's like where is you're threading a needle, it feels like, right? Because you want to bet a size that doesn't wake someone up to the idea that they could bluff raise,
Right.
you know? So I think the sizing stuff.
Yeah,
One,
Jay. What?
one line.
One big blind? Yeah. Yeah.
I cannot tell you one, solver approved, just so you're tracking. Two, um, I can't tell you how many times you do this in a spot and players have no idea what to do. Even if they had like 8, 9 of clubs here, they're just never raising you. Just to be honest, like the only hand that raises you when you do this, right? When you're
Yeah.
dog lead out of position, is nut flushes or second nut flushes, right? Like some random like king jack of clubs or something of that nature. Like you're just 8, 9 doesn't even want to raise you here. You know, it just becomes I have no idea what's going on here. If I raise, I'm afraid that now I'm gonna get back raised, right? And then I just have to fold my 8, 9 of clubs because he just has a better flush. Like they just don't know what to do. So you lose one big blind, you
Yeah.
know? And yeah, maybe we don't get a ton of like max value from like ace jack offhand, right? That happen to have like the ace of club. A good player that has ace of club might just be able to bomb you. Like a good player, right, is going to be able to make this move if they just have like the naked ace of club. So, but you can evaluate there whether or not this player is just capable of doing it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, but that one big blind bet, because here's the thing: if you check and then they bet half pot, like what are you gonna do? You gonna I mean I guess you can find a lot of folds. Craig's gonna tell you, Jay,
Yeah.
you would fold,
Yeah,
but
well, no, I'm saying if you better not do that to me because if I'm holding the ace of spades or ace of clubs or the king of clubs,
I know you.
you're putting all your chips in to find out.
I know. I would never put myself in a blender like that, so you don't have to worry.
So everyone checks, and I do think that really does discount not only the made flushes, but also the ace of club hands. I think like these players probably fire turn with a lot of their flushes and with a lot of their naked ace of clubs hands as well. So like so honestly when the river comes, I have discounted a lot of the hands that beat me here. Um, the river, interestingly, comes an offsuit ace, which it doesn't actually really change the action that much. If I was ahead with a pair of aces, I'm still ahead with three aces. If I was behind a flush, I'm still behind a flush. Um, and so and Kelly, you talked about it, Jay. I size up a little because I'm actually value targeting now another ace. There's only one out there, I know, but um, and this makes it look a little like more polarized as well, I think, when the other one comes there. So I ended up betting about a third pot. Actually, I don't have it written down here exactly how much it was. About a third pot. Middle position folds, and the last player to play, oh, under the gun folds, middle position player calls with ace 10.
There you go.
And just, a great outcome for us.
The other thing
Um,
about that second ace coming is people will get curious now with pocket jacks or pocket queens because they
yes,
discount because
yeah.
there's just less aces in the deck and they're thinking maybe I need to look you, especially with that sizing, I need to look you up with pocket queens, you know?
Hmm.
So you
Hmm.
do get value from that and you get value from the ace.
Do
Yeah.
you are you ever going bigger here? Now, this very card is a very interesting card, and I don't know that I'm even afraid to actually go bigger here as a dog lead.
Hmm.
You know, um, because I do think you get like max value from the like exact hand that just called you, right? And there's a lot of hands that won't raise you in this situation. you know? Yeah, we might put ourselves in a bad spot if it's like ace eight, well, or ace seven, because the turn was the seven of clubs, right? Um, and then like they just got there on the river, but ace seven of clubs we would have heard from on the turn. It would not go check check, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know that I'm opposed to going bigger as a donk lead here because again, like worst case scenario, we get called and we're just going to get called by the flushes because the flushes are probably not going to raise us here. And then we get max value from every worst ace in the deck, you know? So
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm opposed to actually going bigger here for value, to be honest.
Yeah. And I think, one of you guys said it, like it does when the second ace comes, it does make, that pocket kings, pocket queens, pocket jacks hands, like, you know, it's less likely that someone else has the ace. And I think when the original raiser folds for sure, then the other player's like, okay, well they didn't have an ace. Like, there's definitely a chance that they can. I'm just taking a shot at this here. No one bet the turn, right? So like check when everyone checks the turn, like that's a huge that adds a lot of information to the pool. And I should be trying to take this pot away. In that kind of a spot. Uh and all it really does is promote the sets to full houses. That's the only action that this changes. And the I guess and the ace seven, as you say, they could have called behind with like ace seven of spades, called the flop, didn't. But yeah, aren't they betting the river? Aren't they betting the turn there to charge those one club hands? So I really like. It didn't even occur to me to go big here, but this is actually a very interesting spot to go big, Jay.
Yeah. And I think like this is the 10K, right?
Yeah,
So I think in a lower buy-in level, maybe you do go a little small here. People like they kind of flip out, you know?
yeah,
Um, because then like some of the 10Ks, if you have some really good players here and you went big, they might actually find a fold, you know,
right.
because they just believe that there's not too many leads in this spot that don't have them beat, right? Even when they just have a set of aces, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like you would most leads in this spot big would be just flushes, right? That's
yeah. And I do have some flushes because I wouldn't have led them all on the turn, and then when it got checked around, that would be my chance to do it. So I do have some flushes. That's a good point. Yeah.
I think sometimes when we go kind of nitpicking on the rivers, like should we have gone for the big bet, for the small bet, we also have to like do a little bit of common, like some math, like the frequency with a small bet gets paid off versus the infrequency with the large bet. Like I'll just play the game of bye, my wife's leaving. Um, the yeah, I think that I try not to beat myself up after the fact. Getting paid is getting paid. Getting paid on the river is great. And so if the choice is getting paid with a small bet or not getting paid with a big bet, then I'll just take the small bet and just be happy, move on to the next hand, and don't spend a lot of brain power on that one. I think the bigger brain power is to make the bet, make a bet.
yeah, I agree with that. I think you have to do something that most people won't because there is the worst scenario that would ever come out of this is that you checked and then ace 10 decides they're on the tighter side and they go, yeah, I'm not betting this.
Right.
Um, did they have the ace of club, by the way? They
No,
had
they
to.
did not. They didn't.
Oh, they did not.
Yeah. So
Oh,
they called top pair on the flop, and then they were never put to another decision until the river, and then they tripped up.
got it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think Craig makes a very valid point here is just make the bet. And then later on you can determine, I think, if you want to and a review like this, all right, or if you're like got on the phone like I do and call these guys and be like, hey, ugh, I just feel like I should have went for more value here. I missed value. Um, but I think that yeah, making the bet, making the step is uh, the most important key, right? You made a comment about this at one point earlier too. Is like when we're in these spots or as we're improving in our game, like step one is to actually just pull the trigger in situations, right? Um, and in most,
Yeah.
that's like you could argue whether it's correct or incorrect all you want, but the reality is you're never going to get any better at this game other than pure experience, right? And the way you learn from that is to actually follow through on the things that you've either studied or that you've picked up on along the way. And even if you're just being experimental in your game, right? Like, because there's a lot of that we do too. Like, we're just experimenting. Like, what are the thresholds? What happens at these buy-in levels? These never happen at these other stakes, right? So I think that like you just have to just follow through with the action, and that is the most important part of it. And then you can beat yourself up later if you want to, but I don't see any stuff up. I mean, you made the action, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think the other element in my mind was like, this is so I'm targeting such a thin, such as like there's only one other ace out there. So like the odds of them actually having that other ace, um, the action was pretty good for it. Like, I don't think they have a lot of flushes, and if they don't have a lot of flushes, then what other hands are they calling the flop with? So, I like that there is an ace in there, and I like that we can get some of this like pocket queens, pocket jacks to call in there as well. But it did feel like a very specific target that I was making for my hand here. And my thinking in real time was just like let's just put a wide funnel out there with a smaller sizing and just like let as many people fall into that trap as possible. Maybe even some like king seven with one king of clubs maybe gets there or something like that. I don't know. But yeah,
Yeah,
it was a very yeah, yeah.
it's sometimes you get paid by both players on that bet
Right.
size. Honest, like,
True. Yeah,
like
good point.
so. Even you're tripling up the bet. I like it.
Yeah, yeah. So I was really, I was happy with myself, just because I had been looking for spots like this to, like I say, to bet fold. I think it's definitely, let me ask you the last piece of this question then, gang, and then we'll wrap this up. If you get raised here, is this a bet fold? Is it like, you've tripped up? Do you get stuck on having, top trips with the king kicker, correct?
That's why you have to make the decision before you see the card, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because if you wait until you see the card, it's very difficult to have that discipline. Um, well, I missed the sizing of our river bet, except that it was small.
Yeah, it was about a
How?
third. It was about a
Oh,
third.
okay. Um, yeah, I think. I mean, unless we think our opponent can raise ace queen or ace 10 on that river, like the person had. If you're that person and you have ace 10, you're just not raising. So you're
Right.
only raising full houses and flushes. And even the
Yep.
flushes, like Jay said, you're not even raising most of them, you're not raising. Because the other person can have full houses or better flushes. So
Yeah.
I think the answer is yes, you're still check folding. I mean,
Yeah.
still bet folding.
Yeah, Betful. That was my plan going into it, Jay.
Are you check? Are you bet folding to like Adamo?
Yeah, probably not. Probably not to him in particular.
Right. I think you have to definitely consider who you're in the hand with. Like there's not a lot
Yeah.
that have that kind of heart. To your point, Craig, that like most population is only going to be raising there with pure nuts, right? And then we just feel like we have to lay the hand down, you know. But if you're at a table where you get, those like two specific players, right? I don't know that I'm ever folding. You know what I mean? Because they're
Mhm.
just too capable of taking this hand away from me with the exact, random like king of club with the jack of spade. You know what I mean? And they just have a ability to outplay us here when we do this. So I think understanding who is on my, who has position on me, and I make this play of who I'm actually folding to. Gen pop, yeah, I think if there's a raise, you're probably laying it down, right?
Now,
Against tougher players, it'd be very tough for me to actually lay that down.
Now, before Craig jumps in here, I just want to ask, so then we might even just take a check call line against those players because we know that they're that aggressive, that they're more likely, if we give them some rope, they're more likely to fire. And so then we're kind of like, we have to call when we check to those players. Part of the bet folding line, as you guys have drawn out here, is that when you check, people are inclined to bluff bet. When you bet, there that kind of freezes that. Like I think the river raise line in the games that I'm used to playing is much more nutted than the river bet into a check line. And so I can kind of like sleep more comfortably that night when I bet fold than when I check fold. So that's part of it, and part of it's getting the extra value. But I wonder if we knew that those players were going to be like super aggressive and we're going to be taking every pot away, I would be more inclined to just take the check line against that player tendency and call
I'd just be inclined to not play that tournament.
him.
I mean, I don't need to play again. If we're talking that level and that good,
Yeah,
You're
good
soft.
point.
You're too soft.
I'm also profitable.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, game selection, baby. It's an unsexy skill of poker, bankroll management and game selection. We talk about this all the time. You're not going to see these two virtues praised on all the training sites out there telling you how to crush it like a pro, but bankroll management and game selection, that's how you profit in this game, no doubt.
For sure.
All right. Well, this was phenomenal. Another fantastic breakdown. Thank you to Kim Kilroy, Scott Beckham, Jay Carafiello, and Craig Savage. Thanks to the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. I hope you can join us up there on January 31st and February 1st. Thanks for tuning in. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, everybody. See you next week on the RecPoker Podcast. Good night, all.